Thanks for joining us for this third video in our Cedar hot tub video series. Today we want to talk a little bit about joinery. We want to share with you the type of joint that we're creating, some of the lessons we've learned from creating this joint, and then a few tips and tricks to get the joints to seat properly. So let's jump into joinery. Here we have a few of the staves that are actually ready to be assembled. You can tell from looking at this joint that it's a pretty unique joint. This actually comes from canoe making. In fact, they often refer to this as a canoe joint. There are a few other different names for it, such as bead and cove, and that's what we actually purchased, was a bead and a coving bit. These are 1/2 inch radius bits, and this allows us to work with 1.5 inch stock, and yet leaves a small shelf here that helps the hinge to actually seat properly. And so if you wanted to do this, you can do this with your own router. You can do this with a molder or a planer shaper, but you're looking at a pretty good investment. Unless you have one of those laying around, this is going to be a pretty costly task. The router, you're probably looking at around $100 to $150. The bits range anywhere from $50 to $75 a piece, and they'll easily do the entire job. You'll need to run each board 4 times total. Each of these joints represents a run on this side and this side. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of processing time in these staves. One of the challenges you'll face in working with a 1/2 inch radius bit is that sometimes if you're not using a firm fence with your router table, you'll get a little bit of gouging on the face of the bull nose. And so what we're actually doing is we're using a small shaper tool to remove this little lip right here. These were actually run through a planer to help remove that, but there's still a little bit of work to be done. It's easy to get too aggressive with a planer. So I'm actually finishing these by hand, and what we're trying to do is get this joint to be extremely smooth. And I'll show you how these boards go together and make perfect sense why you want this to be nice and round. So this joint is really simple, obviously, and it's designed to simply hinge. So the convex and concave go together, and what this allows the boards to do is to hinge on each other. And ideally, once we assemble the entire hot tub and we put a tension band around the outside, these boards should swell up and seal against one another and make the hot tub watertight. Of course, worst case scenario, we'll have to do a little bit of work to seal off the tub. But you can get an idea why you want the hinge to be nice and smooth. One other tip we'd like to share is to try to use staves, even though they might not look like they're the best for your hot tub. For example, this one's got a pretty gnarly knot and defect in it, but we went ahead and did the joinery on it anyway. You never know, you might need an extra stave for some reason, one might get damaged, etc. And there's some work we could do to make this usable, but we probably won't use it right away. So we thought we'd just share that. If you have one that's got a little bit of a boo-boo near the bottom or the top of the stave, go ahead and join it and keep it handy. Worst case scenario, you might be able to put this above the water line, or we may be able to put it below the water line because we cut these a little bit long. And now for the final joinery that we'll be doing on the staves. We've already done our floor work. We're going to mention that in a separate video. What we're going to do today is cut the dado joint in the bottom of the staves here, and that's so that these staves will actually attach to the floor. And that's a really precise joint. It's very important that it's extremely snug against your floor material. So take some time, measure that very, very carefully, and figure out a way to jig maybe your table saw or a sliding compound miter saw, or if you wanted to, you could even do it with a router. We're going to do ours with a table saw and a miter gauge. So let's get started cutting these joints. All of our staves are now finished. It took us probably a couple of hours to finish all of the dado joints on the table saw. Turned out perfect. Really quick tip, if you decide to go this direction with your DIY hot tub, highly recommend that you test fit each stave as you make them. So we just kept a piece of our flooring stock available, and after every single joint, we did a test fit just to make sure that everything is still dialed, because you don't want to screw up. We don't have any extra staves. We have like 2 extra, so getting it right the first time, really important. Anyway, went really well. Highly recommend the table saw for this joint. Worked really well for us. Here's all the staves. You can see that we've got a bunch. Our magic number is 64 in theory. So we're gonna get to moving on to the floor. We'll get that put together and we'll start putting staves on, and we'll get this tub assembled. If you enjoyed watching this video and you want to learn more about our Cedar hot tub, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll put a subscribe button right here. And if you want to learn more about our off-grid homestead journey, please subscribe, follow us on our blog. It's purelivingforlife.com. We also have a Facebook and an Instagram. If you like those, please follow us. We'll put the links in the description below. We'll see you in the next video.